We're chronically worried about our finances, health, relationships, the housing market or the stock market. Am I good enough? Oh, the shape of my body? Damn, I have lines on my face. Oh, the dwindling health. Gosh, should I stay in this marriage or not? What to eat, what not to eat? Wars, mass shootings, attacks, natural disasters, climate change, political fate of the country and the economy. The list is endless. Once upon a time as cavemen, all we worried was about the saber-toothed tiger, wild bears, or any attack that may occur on the tribe. We have evolved through our fight-or-flight responses to escape these dangers. Worry and anxiety serve us to be safe. Time to time, the short bursts of adrenaline and a feeling of anxiety kept the species alive. Our amygdala, the part of the brain that triggers the fight-or-flight response, is responsible for safeguarding us. But today, we are living in much safer times in human history, and there are no wild bears or saber-toothed tigers chasing us. Yet our amygdala is actively engaging in thinking and strategizing every time when it interprets challenges as immediate dangers. It misinterprets everyday challenges and irritations, from giving a presentation, to flying on a plane, to receiving a large bill in the post, as life or death situations. Then it fires up our survival response, pouring adrenaline into our bloodstream and making sure we're on high alert. A bit of worry and anxiety is helpful and adaptive. It's completely necessary, not only for fight and flight situations, but also as a force that will pressurize you to do things before the deadline. For example, a student might need to achieve a certain score on a test in order to be accepted into medical school. His anxiety motivates him to study, take a test prep course, and spend considerable time on practice tests. The fear of failure can act as a catalyst and make him work harder. Short-term worry can be productive if it helps you plan and solve problems.
Anxiety is actually a normal response to stress, and in some situations, it can actually be beneficial. If you're a manager and you don't feel some level of anxiety when you have to make the tough decisions that involve your employees, I'm going to worry about you. If you're scheduled to give a presentation in front of a large group of people and you say you don't have any level of anxiety, I'm going to question that, because some of that anxiety can actually give you the energy that you need in order to be an effective presenter. I speak in front of large audiences all the time, and I also appear on TV. And I feel that lump in my throat and the butterflies in my stomach and that tightness in my chest. It's that level of anxiety that you want to see in somebody that's going to speak to you when you're in a large crowd, or that you're going to see on TV.
Most people's question is, Brendan, how do I overcome anxiety when that's an immediate tell to where the problem lies? They're trying to stop something. They're trying to, let me stop having so much anxiety. And my argument as a high-performance coach is always, actually, what would happen if we turned our attention and started asking a different kind of question, which is this: what must I begin to do to develop more confidence and strength in my life? Because I believe you can develop your strengths and your confidences in life to such a degree that you just stop experiencing as much anxiety without even working on the anxiety. Say, what would I have to do in social situations to be able to, develop some confidence? What would I need to do to develop a deeper competency, skill set, talent, ability in this new area that will make me an all-around stronger, more competent, and capable person? I think we should focus on the plan to develop your strengths much more than just stopping some of the inadequacies or the worries. Those will always be there. If you don't have them, the game is over. If I ever get to the point where I'm backstage and I'm about to go out on stage and perform for thousands of people who've paid thousands of dollars to see me, who came from 40 plus countries to be in the room, if I don't have any anxiety to that, some performance anxiety, that's going to tell me that's probably the day I should, turn it in, quit, retire. because it means I don't care enough about it. I want to experience some anxiety. I want to have a little stress. We know from high performance studies that a little bit of stress can give that edge in performance as long as it's managed, as long as it's utilized as a tool to pay attention, to focus, to execute, versus as an excuse to stop. So how have you been using anxiety? As a performance enhancement tool or an excuse to stop? The world's highest performers use it as a tool. They get an edge from it and they say, okay, I'm nervous, but that tells me I'm in the game, I better pay attention. And they also develop plans to develop themselves, to strengthen themselves in all their areas, emotionally, socially, financially, physically, spiritually, so that those anxieties start to diminish as they become more.
Worry can also be helpful if it leads to new perspectives on the problem. But worry becomes a problem if it is uncontrollable and stops you from enjoying life.
It's when that anxiety becomes more than you can handle that it actually becomes a problem. It's when it interferes with your daily functioning, your relationships, your performance at work or at home, or your ability to manage the tasks that are your responsibility on a day-to-day basis. When it interferes with your ability to work to the best of your ability emotionally, behaviorally, and intellectually. That's when the anxiety might be excessive.
Some people think worrying will help you avoid bad things, prevent problems, and prepare you for the worst or leads to solutions. The downside of this is that worrying can turn into a habit that you can lose control over. Worrying is an imaginative thinking process or an attempt to engage in mental problem solving on an issue whose outcome is uncertain or negative. We worry to avoid unpleasant emotions like anxiety, shame, guilt, pain, sorrow, failure, etc. People who worry a lot think too much, rather than feeling the emotional impact of a negative event. Evidence from EEGs indicates that people who worry a lot show greater activity in the cortical or thinking sections of their brains, and suppressed activity in the limbic, amygdala, or emotional section of the brain. Thus, they are relying on the non-emotional part of their brains, the cortical sections, to handle threat, i.e., they are thinkers rather than feelers. If worry is thinking, then anxiety is feeling. We worry to avoid anxiety, but when we overthink or worry too much, we tend to trigger anxiety. You see, thinking, feelings, and behaviors are very much interconnected. Worrying too much is one of the anxiety symptoms. Anxiety has three main components: emotional, physiological, and cognitive. Worry is the cognitive component of thinking negatively and anticipating a negative outcome.
So, worry is the thinking part of anxiety. It happens in our frontal lobes, the part of our brain that plans and thinks and uses words, and it has to do with thoughts like, is she mad at me? Or what's going to happen at my upcoming performance? Now, we humans have developed this part of our brain for important reasons. Worry helps us solve complex problems by thinking about them, perhaps over and over again. But if worry becomes distorted, compulsive, or stuck into a repetitive cycle, then we can develop disorders like depression and anxiety.
Anxiety isn't just a problem of overreacting to things happening around us, but our anxiety response can be triggered by things that exist only in our minds. This happens when we worry about the worst-case scenarios, which may never happen. Remember this: the cognitive birthplace of anxiety is a worrying habit. Occasional worrying is no problem, but when worry turns into rumination, there is a big problem. Rumination is persistent and repetitive worry, in which you revisit the same information repeatedly without finding any new answers. Worrying can trigger the stressor by bringing up more and more negative possibilities without landing on any positive outcome. One negative thought leads to another, and you start feeling more and more stressed. Also, excessive worrying will start with one domain that you worry about, but sooner it triggers other domains of your life like a domino effect. This makes you feel that the worst is already happening. And sadly, our brains don't always distinguish between what is imagined and what is real. Rumination goes beyond trying to solve a problem or deal with a stressor.
Have you ever heard of the term rumination? Rumination or ruminating is something a cow does when it chews its food over and over again. We depressives are very much like cows in that we don't chew our food over and over again, but we chew our thoughts over and over again. We ruminate on our thoughts, and most of these thoughts are negative. For example, have you ever caught yourself thinking about the same thing over and over and over again? It could be the breakup of a marriage or a job loss or a bad investment you made that went south. Just chewing these things in your mind over and over again digs you deeper into a hole. It actually reinforces circuits in your brain that are negative and makes you harder to get out of that hole that you've dug for yourself by chewing over those thoughts again and again and again. Visual analogy of this process is imagine digging a ditch and you're in the ditch and you dig and you dig and you dig, and the more you dig, the bigger the ditch becomes and the more you're stuck in it. So that's what ruminating does. It's digging yourself into a ditch.
Worry and rumination are the result of a feedback loop between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. When your amygdala sends out its alarm signals, your prefrontal cortex analyzes the alarm through worrying. And then, instead of calming down your amygdala, comes up with other things that might go wrong. This creates a vicious cycle of escalating and self-perpetuating alarm and worry between your amygdala and your prefrontal cortex. Research using brain scans shows that rumination is associated with increased amygdala activity during the processing of emotional stimuli.
So what do we worry about? Even though most of our worries are about the future, we also worry about what happened in the past and what is happening right now. You see, worry affects all three timelines of our life: the past, the present, and the future. We worry about what happened in the past. Stressful events or significant emotional events of what happened to you in the past, traumatic experiences, can leave you with the scars in the present. Things like your parents' acrimonious divorce or death of someone close to you, experiencing abuse, or being in an accident. All this can be highly stressful, and these traumatic experiences can leave you with a feeling of being unsafe and uncertain in the present. In this context, even though worrying helps you with a coping mechanism or a protection mechanism to shield you in the present and the future danger, but the very habit of worrying can also be induced by just experiencing these past events.
Our past emotional events, traumas, regrets, guilt, shame, resentment, and depression can put us in a state of mind where we can perceive most of the things as threats, leading us to worrying too much. We lose control of our thinking because our body becomes our mind. Dr. Joe Dispenza, in his book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, explains how emotions can lead to moods, and moods to temperaments and personality traits. Our brain always works by repetition and association. It doesn't take a major trauma to produce the effect of the body becoming the mind. The most minor triggers can produce emotional responses that feel as though they are beyond our control. For example, let's assume you had a fight with your spouse, and an emotion of unsettling anger lingers on through sulking. You prolong the emotional reaction for quite some time. Now that unsettling anger and hurt turns into a bad mood in a few hours or days. When the chemical refractory period of an emotional reaction lasts for hours to days, that's a mood. If the mood continues for weeks and months, then it becomes a temperament. Eventually, if you let the refractory period of an emotion go on for months and years, that tendency turns into a personality trait. At that point, others will describe you as bitter or resentful or angry or judgmental. According to Dr. Joe Dispenza, our personality traits, then, are frequently based on our past emotions. Most of the time, personality, how we think, act, and feel, is anchored in the past. So to change our personalities, we have to change the emotions that we memorize. We have to move out of the past.
An experience created an emotional reaction, and a prolonged recollection of it from time to time can turn that into a mood, and then into a temperament, and then finally into a personality trait. The truth is that you may be through with your past, but the past may not be through with you. if you have a worrying habit and most of your worries are about the future, the very habit of worrying is something that you have picked up in the past. Maybe something did not go according to your plan. Maybe it happened several times. Now you worry about unfavorable consequences, things that will not happen your way because it never happened in the past. Now you're becoming more and more certain about unfavorable and negative outcomes, and you're gaining more certainty about the uncertain outcomes, negative outcomes. Now this is playing in your mind, and it becomes more like a self-fulfilling prophecy. What you worry about is becoming more like what you keep manifesting in your life.
We also worry in the present, engaged in negative thinking, overwhelmed by tasks and deadlines at hand. We worry when we encounter unpleasant people and situations. We worry with the fear of missing out. Being constantly connected to social media can become addictive. Research says we check our phones up to 85 times a day. That's a lot of potential for added stress and information overload, not to mention envy and dissatisfaction with our lives.
Ultimately, most of our worries are about the future. We worry about the future for all the uncertainty it presents. We try to control things that we don't have a control over. We worry about the diseases we don't have. We worry about our loved ones for the uncertain future or negative outcomes that will happen in their lives. We worry about an uncertain future for all what media depicts today through breaking news and other stories. We think about the future, and our pessimistic interpretation of it makes us visualize these unpleasant fictional scenarios so repeatedly that it becomes real to us. Our fictitious stories of the future can often manifest as our reality.
Dr. Stan Beecham, the author of Elite Minds, writes, "A negative belief about the future almost always leads to anxiety and stress. In fact, that is what anxiety or worry is, a negative belief about the future. Anxiety is future-based, while depression is past-based. If you ask people what they are anxious about, they will tell you a story of something they are fearful will happen in the near future. When talking to people who are depressed, their story typically begins with the past and the unfortunate events that they have had to endure."
Depression and anxiety are two different sides of the same coin. Now, depression and anxieties are nothing but reviews and rehearsals of the past and future that takes place in the left brain. Now, depression plays the tapes of would have, should have, and could haves of the past, whereas anxiety locks onto the uncertainty and unpredictabilities of the future.
Studies have proved that a worrying habit is the central component of all the anxiety disorders and depression. Research shows that worry precedes the onset of depression. You literally worry yourself into depression. The starting point is a fearful thought that leads to a parade of more fearful thoughts. Our thoughts are not about what happened in the past, but it's the emotional and rational interpretation of what happened to us. Two people can go through similar traumatic experience, and one can get over it while the other can be depressed all their life about it. Therefore, worrying is a narrative either about the past or about the future. Millions of people suffer across the world for lacking a life skill on how to create a positive narrative about their past tragedies and future fears.
So what are the solutions to worrying? Whenever you worried in the past, your friends, your near and dear ones would have told you these comforting words. Stop worrying, take it easy, be positive. There's nothing to worry about. Believe in yourself, have some faith. Everything will work out at the end, everything will be perfect. And all these consolations would have worked for you at some time, but they don't have a lasting impact from stopping you from the worrying habit. It's interesting to know that we don't worry for everything. Our worries are specific. Some of us worry about money and finances. Some people worry about health. Some people worry about their relationship. Some people worry about themselves. Some people worry about their loved ones.
Each of us has a different profile and pattern for how and why we worry. Some worries are productive because it helps us solve problems and take action. Worrying as a habit is unproductive because it can lead to anxiety disorders, depression, and self-sabotaging behaviors.
There are many ways to overcome the habit of worrying. We worry about the things that we don't want to accept in our life, whether it is something that happened or something that we may fear might happen in the future. You see, worry is always a struggle against what is real or what is possible. Once you accept our reality, we transcend worry. You see, acceptance is the cure for worry.
Robert L. Leahy writes in his book, The Worry Cure, acceptance is seeing things as they really are, not as you think they are. Acceptance literally means receiving what is here in the present and seeing reality transparently, not through the distorted lens of your worries. Acceptance means being aware of what is real right now, not what could happen.
We humans are very much subjective in our thinking, and we miss to perceive reality objectively. You see, you and I don't see things as they are, we see things as we are. But when we accept it, when you accept the reality as it is, we transcend it. We struggle only with worries when we deny or when we try to protest it from refusing to accept the reality as it is. The difficulty is in accepting your future reality with current limitations. You worry because you have a compelling need to have all the answers, all the solutions to a future problem. You want all the solutions to a future problem right now. You can't accept your current limitations for a future problem. You feel you have to know everything, you have to plan for everything, solve all the problems that could exist in the future. You want all the answers right now. You want all the resources right now. And you can't accept the limitation of your present. You refuse to accept your current limitations, and hence you feel your life is out of control. Your problems are out of control. You overthink trying to solve all the problems of the future with your current limitations. You feel helpless, and you begin to make a habit of worrying.
The purpose of worry is to make you resourceful to handle future challenges. Productive worrying is only helping you to be alert and to prepare. Worry is not asking you to feel helpless because you don't have the resources right now.
Now, most worry is caused by resistance or a refusal to face or to deal with the worst thing that could possibly occur if your worry situation were to happen. Once you've defined the worst possible outcome of the situation, much of your stress will disappear and your mind will become calm and constructive again. Let's say you're in a bad investment and the money is in and it's gone, and there's a very good likelihood that you could lose some or all of it. So you write down, the worst thing that can happen here is that I lose all the money I invested. Then you say, well, that's not going to kill me. And then suddenly your worry starts to go away. It's the refusal to face the worry situation that causes the stress.
Psychologist Marcia Linehan at the University of Washington suggests that radical acceptance of reality, looking at reality and seeing it for what it is, can help us when we are frustrated, angry, depressed, or anxious. For example, you've broken up with your partner and you do not know how long you will be alone. Radical acceptance means that you are going to look at reality not the way you demand that it has to be, but the way that it is. This is an important distinction. You may say to yourself, I can't stand the fact that we broke up. I demand that things be made right. You might feel like stomping your feet. You might spend hours complaining to your friends. You waste time ruminating and dwelling on it and asking endlessly, why me? None of this will do you any good.
Radical acceptance means that you recognize that there is a reality that you're going to live with. So if you break up with your partner, you accept the breakup. Whether you like it or not, you do not choose to live in denial. You accept the reality, and that acceptance gives you a new starting point to start a new relationship. The advantage of radical acceptance is that it gives you a new place to start from. So if you have lost all the money, and the reality is that there's no money left, that's not the end of it. That is the starting point for a new beginning to explore, to start again your financial journey. So if you're diagnosed with symptoms of a disease, that's not the end of it. That's the new beginning for you to choose to work with healers to get better. That is the new beginning and not the end. See, nothing is an end or a full stop. In radical acceptance, the end is the new beginning. So you can't fight the past. That's already a lost battle. Plus, what we resist, we persist. So the cure for all worries is radical acceptance. Remember, most of your worries are about the future predictions. And if you recall your past worries, then you realize that most of your past predictions have always gone wrong.
Winston Churchill aptly said, "When I look back on all these worries, I remember the story of the old man who said on his deathbed that he had had a lot of trouble in his life, most of which had never happened." A lot of our worries are predictions that are completely out of sync with reality. We have an imaginative mind, and our amazing mind can think of thousands of future scenarios when faced with a single threat. The truth of the matter is that everything in the future is only a probability and not a complete certainty. Worry is only a part of the probability where things can take a bad turn, but it's certainly not the end of a road. If you play sports, you are likely to lose as many times as you win. If you invest, you will likely lose some money, if not most of the time.
Our fear of failure makes us worry. So if you don't like failure, then choose not to have a personal relationship with success either. Change your perspective. Stop taking credit for your failure and success. When you're successful, don't say, "I succeeded." Or when you're failing, you don't say, "I failed." You say, "I didn't fail. My actions failed, my decisions failed, my sales pitch failed." When you're successful, don't take credit for it. Say it like, "Okay, my action succeeded, my decision succeeded, my sales pitch succeeded." You don't need to take credit for your success, neither failure, if you don't like failure. But if you love success, and if you want to have a personal relationship with success, then give the same credit to the failures as well.
Pure acceptance of the future transcends worries. Remember, in the future, everything is a probability and not certainty. If you think otherwise, test your own predictions. How many of it has gone wrong, and how many were right? Chances are, you will remember the ones you got right.
So one of the best ways to stop worrying and start living is to take things one day at a time. Forget what's happened in the past that you cannot change, and don't worry about what might happen in the future. 99% of the things that you worry about will never occur.
When you ruminate, you are underestimating your own capacity to cope with the unforeseen or unanticipated negative outcomes. You have to get realistic and separate fantasy from facts. Remember, fear means fantasized experiences appearing real. Everything you imagine need not happen. Work on the probability factor. Don't believe in everything what an insurance salesman tells you. You don't need to be scared to fly in a plane either, because the odds of being killed on a flight is only 1 in 29.4 million. To overcome worrying habits, learn to talk back to your worries. In his book, The Worry Cure, author Robert L. Leahy talks about cognitive behavioral therapy as a process to deal with anxiety. He recommends to ask yourself a few questions in relation to your current stressor and write your answers in a journal or on a separate piece of paper. What am I afraid will happen? You got to be very specific with the answer about your stressor. For example, "I'll lose my job," or "My wife will leave me." Probe yourself. Are these things that will definitely happen, or things that might happen? Am I confusing thoughts, which are really guesses about what might happen, with facts? What evidence do I have that these things will happen? Is there any evidence suggesting that they won't happen? What's the best thing that could happen? Conversely, what's the worst thing that could happen? What's most likely to happen? Why is this outcome most likely? If the worst did happen, how bad would it be? On a scale of 0 to 100, with 100 being a loved one dying, what would I rate this event? Could I survive the worst possible outcome? If my family members are likely to be affected, could they survive it? What aspects of mine and my family members' life would stay the same, even if it happens? For example, we would have to sell our house or leave our neighborhood, but we'd still be able to buy or rent a house in a nearby neighborhood. What strategies could I use to cope with the worst possible outcome if it did happen? If the worst did happen, are there any resources or sources of support I could rely on to help me get through it, like friends or family, loans, government programs, and so on? Does the stressful event feel less like a catastrophe now? Why? And in what way? These rational and cognitive probing helps you to think productively, and using these right questioning method can help you solve your worries rather than being overwhelmed. Another method you could try is to switch from your point of view to another person's point of view. When you depersonalize the future event, think as to how you'd choose to advise that person with his or her worries. Think like a coach and see what suggestions you can give if somebody else was talking about his or her worries. Get your emotions out of it and think like a solution provider. Remember, worry is not action. Action is doing and not thinking. Solving problems means actually solving a problem, not worrying about it.
Worrying is all about telling these sad, sobbing stories about unforeseen events or unfavorable outcomes or unpredictable futures. Therefore, one of the best ways you can stop yourself from a worrying habit is to change your explanatory style, to change your storytelling from negative to positive. So instead of telling sad, sobbing, negative stories, start telling yourself good, positive stories also.
When you think about bad outcomes, you are telling stories about how everything will end up badly, filling your imagination with details.
Einstein said worry is a terrible waste of the imagination. What he meant by that was, if we worry, that means we're focusing into the future with kind of a negative expectation. Now, a lot of us can say, well, Dr. Gary, there's a lot of things right now today we can be worried about that are going on in our life today. However, what's really going on is as you think about those things and you start projecting yourself into the future, you see no resolution to it, so it creates worry. How do we get rid of worry? Worry is a waste of our imagination. If we really realize when we're worrying about something, we're fantasizing about something that hasn't really happened yet. And what we have to really understand is in this moment today, right here, right now, is literally, effectively, our point of where we have power over those things. Rather than worrying about looking into the future and wondering what's going to happen because today you haven't got the solution, ask yourself this question. Today, what can I do to start solving what could be a problem in the future? However, it's not a problem today.
Visualizing our future scenarios through negative stories make the imaginative experiences seem very real to us. Our negative thoughts make the build-up of bad stories easier for the mind. That's why we can easily retrieve negative thoughts if they are part of a negative story. The reason for this is that we are much better at placing ourselves as part of a story than trying to remember specific facts. If we are going to aim for better outcome, we must start telling ourselves better stories that will lead to a better outcome. So, people can get triggered about worrying with almost anything. All you need is sometimes some bad news or some reporter saying something about, kids are not being safe at school. That can make parents worried. For example, a mother could build up imaginative stories in her head that her children are not safe at school. They may get kidnapped, or they could get into drug abuse, or there could be any mass shooting. The same mother could also build up positive stories in her head that, thinking hopefully that everything is fine and the kids will abstain from drugs and they're living in a safe environment, in a safer world. So worry could be induced from any external stimulations that we get. It's how we process these informations, what people say, or how we interpret events or the circumstances that we are in. It's how we positively interpret makes the difference between worrying and staying in peace of mind.
Most worries are the stories of fear. People feel fearful deeply about the unknown and the unforeseen and feelings that can betray them. Do you assume something is true just because it feels true? For example, do you think you're a loser or unlovable because it just feels that way? Or are these self-induced thoughts? If your narrative about your future is purely from an emotional perspective, it may not be true at all. Because when your feelings change, the nature of your narrative changes too. In the book, Learned Optimism, How to Change Your Mind and Your Life, Martin Seligman teaches the psychology as our explanatory style, the language we use and the way we perceive our experiences, especially the challenging ones. According to Dr. Seligman, seeing bad situations as permanent, personal, and pervasive leads to learned helplessness. While you can't control your experiences, you can control your explanations. Many things in life are outside of our control, but one thing that is within our control is how we explain the things that happen to us. When something goes wrong, be careful how you explain it to yourself. An optimist explains negative things that happen as temporary, objective, and situational. On the other hand, a pessimist explains things as permanent, personal, and pervasive. People who are optimistic and pessimistic have opposing explanatory styles. An optimist in bad situations will say that the situation is temporary, which means this too shall pass. They see it as specific according to the situation, and they will say, okay, in this case, things didn't go so well, and they see cause as something external. It's the situation. The pessimists in bad situations have different explanatory styles. They will see their situation as permanent and think, this will never change. Whereas pervasive thinking sounds something like this: nothing ever goes right, and it's my fault. Learn to see the future negative events as temporary, situational, and specific. Don't need to personalize everything around you. If you don't have clear evidence, you are not responsible for everything going wrong around you. Often, stressors happen because of factors beyond your control. Just because you get cancer doesn't mean you weren't looking after your health. You may be laid off or not find a job because of the state of the economy, not because you're not good enough. Your partner may leave you because he or she has commitment issues, not because of anything you did or didn't do. Personalizing leads you to believe you did something wrong to cause a negative outcome, but that may not be the case at all times.
Also, learn to come into terms with your past, because there is nothing permanent or pervasive. Guilt and regrets must not be used to loathe yourself. It must be used for course correction, to take second chances, to make amends, to fix something that was broken in the past. Once you've made amends, you need to forgive yourself. Otherwise, guilt will play upon you, will entrap you, and keep you from being mentally present for the people you love. If you are regretting a past decision, are you taking the prior circumstances into account? What if at that time you did your best with the state of mind you were in? You may know a lot more now than you did then. At the time you made that decision, because you didn't have the information that you have now, and you are not even the same person then. People change.
We can also change the narrative about what happened to us in the past. We can give different meaning to it. We can tell a better story that will stop us from thinking negatively. First of all, nobody wants to listen to your sob stories, and every time you're narrating a sad story, you're also reliving that experience several times.
A repetitive narration of a negative story can actually make your nervous system and your body relive the same experience over and over again. It's like copying and pasting a single file, and you do it thousands of times, and you're filling your computer hard disk with one single file.
The content of a bad experience can be changed with different information. It's the meaning that liberates us from our tragedies. Giving meaning to a disaster is the way we transcend its negative impact on us. Coming to terms with tragedies help us overcome them. Finding a better meaning out of bad experiences can change our explanatory style. That's why some tragedies in life are termed as turning points, lessons learned, the rock bottom that you built your life on, and so on. When you change the meaning of a past event, your neuroassociation with that experience changes completely. Your recollection of the past is not about what happened to you. It's what you think happened to you. Another reason why most people have a habit of worrying is due to their compelling need to be certain about their future. The cure to that is to embrace uncertainty. You don't need to know all the answers to solving your future hypothetical problem right now. According to Dr. Robert L. Leahy, author of the book, The Worry Cure, worry is always an escape from the present moment and an attempt to control future time.
You know, when I was depressed and you were depressed, we all worried about a lot of things, right? I worried I was never going to get better. I worried I was always going to have to live with my parents, right? I worried I was never going to be independent. And I also worried I was going to die in a mental hospital because I became obsessed with the thought that this was how I was going to end up, because my cousin had ended up there, a friend in high school. I was just consumed by this thought, and I couldn't get out of my head about it until this counselor and I came up with a 3-step technique or tool, which I called Back to the Present. Remember, there was a very popular film in the early 80s called Back to the Future? Of course. This is called Back to the Present, and I wrote about it in my book here because it's really about taking your mind and reeling it back in from the future and back to the here and now, because the here and now is the only reality. See, everything else is just a figment of our imagination. So how do we get back? And you know, in AA, they say one day at a time. That's why they say that. So the first step into this back to the present technique is to notice what's happening, to become aware. Oh my God, I'm worrying, I'm catastrophizing, you know? I'm thinking something's horrible is going to happen, and you just catch yourself doing it. Once you catch yourself doing it, step 2 is, but you know what? This is in the future, but I'm in the present, so I'm safe right now. This can't hurt me because it has yet to happen. This is a figment of my mind and my imagination. Right. So this is really not real. Here I am in the room, I'm breathing, I'm alive, I have food, I have oxygen, I'm okay. So here we are in the present. This is a made-up figment of my imagination. And the third thing to do is to, once you realize that the future cannot hurt you, is to bring yourself back into the present through some sort of positive self-talk or a positive action. For example, this too shall pass. I've gotten out of these depressions before. I can get out again. Or turn your attention out of your mind, right, into an activity like go around the block and take a walk. Call a friend, right? Turn on some music. Distract yourself, you know. Take your focus out from looking inward into the world and do a present-day coping strategy. Now, when my mind was going like this and this, I would then pop a Klonopin sometimes, which is a minor tranquilizer, which I save for occasions when my thoughts and my actions couldn't work. And what the Klonopin would do is in 20 minutes I'd be loopy and kind of silly and dumb, but I wouldn't be worrying. So, and the idea was how can I get myself through the end of the day? Because once I went to sleep, I knew that tomorrow was a new day and I could start all over again. So do something in the here and now that brings your focus back into the here and now and get out of the future. And anytime you catch yourself catastrophizing, anytime you start to find yourself worrying, notice what you're doing, tell yourself this is the future, not the present, and do something in the here and now. So that's the technique that I used.
Almost all worriers have a sense of time urgency, the sense that you have to have the answer right now. The man who worries about his health wants a diagnosis and a prognosis right now. The woman who worries about losing her job wants to know right now what her future history will be as an employee. The person getting a divorce wants to know who their future partner will be. Worriers in general have no respect for the future tense. The reason they are also tensed most of the time is that they want their events of future tense right now, in the present tense. Uncertainty is a reality that you need to embrace. We don't know for sure what will happen tomorrow or the next day. We can make an educated guess, but there is no guarantee to our guesses and worries. Psychologists Michel Dugas and Robert Landauer found that worriers can't tolerate not knowing something for sure. Worriers keep looking for a perfect solution, an answer to every possible question they can ask, and a clear prediction for every possible what if. In the absence of this certainty, they keep worrying until they find it.
Instead of worrying, imagine how different your life would be if you believed that everything would have worked out for you. You would have had less stress and less worries in your life, isn't it? Whenever you had a setback, you would have believed or you would have thought that it's all part of a process. Or you would have called these setbacks as part of a higher plan, or it's a sign for a detour to get to where you want to be. And you would have continued your journey with full optimism and hope. Moreover, a faith in the higher power or the universal intelligence can help you embrace your future uncertainties without fear. Remember, the universe is on your side. The universe is on your side. So when you build a faith and deep optimism in yourself and in your future, you begin to develop an optimistic mind. One of the reasons why people worry is that they don't expand the universe beyond themselves. Meaning they are so self-centric and self-centered on themselves, on the people they care about. This can lead to a lot of worry. Doesn't mean that you don't really care about people. It means that you don't really get obsessed with it.
A worrying habit can affect you mentally, emotionally, and physically. The very skill that kept our caveman ancestors alive, looking for the bad stuff and ignoring the good stuff, is killing us today. Millions of people each year die through panic attacks, manic depression, drug abuse, and self-medication. Worrying and anxiety increases high cortisol in our bloodstream. Over time, high cortisol disrupts cell metabolism so that excessive calcium enters brain cells and produces free radicals, the most harmful molecules in the body. Free radicals trigger a range of degenerative illnesses and rapid aging. High cortisol also leads to dysfunction in our mitochondria, the energy factories of cells. We then feel tired and our energy levels crash. Cortisol kills neurons in the brain's hippocampus, which governs emotional regulation, memory, and learning. Increased cortisol levels can prevent female orgasm and cause erectile dysfunction for men. Moreover, cortisol is accompanied by high beta brainwaves, the signature brainwaves of stress and anxiety. Your body ages much faster when your brain is bathing in high beta waves. Studies show that mindful practices produce a host of beneficial changes in brainwaves, like decrease in beta waves and increase in alpha, theta, and gamma waves. Meditation moves you out of fight or flight and into stay and play. Within a few days of starting a meditation practice, adrenaline and cortisol levels drop throughout the body. The meditation, combined with mindfulness and manifesting, will help your brain naturally begin producing more of those wonderful bliss chemicals, dopamine and serotonin.
And so oftentimes when we're feeling really worried, when we're feeling really stressed, when we're overthinking about something, oftentimes it's about something in the future, something that we're worrying about happening, that we're anticipating, or that we're fearing, or that we're getting nervous or worked up about. And it's not actually that we're in danger or there's anything bad going on right now in this moment. It's only when we get into those thoughts about something that could or might happen that we get ourselves worked up. So just getting present, and this is one of my favorite exercises, and for me it works wonders, that when I notice myself getting really worked up about something, I just take a second and I remind myself that aside from my thoughts about the future or my regrets from the past, my fears for the future, my regrets from the past, in this moment, I am okay. And I think for most of us, we can say that aside from being in, immediate or actual danger in this moment, or in immediate or actual physical pain, or if we're in the middle of something traumatic, that doesn't count. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about pretty much almost any other situation that we're in, any other circumstance that we find ourselves in, when we're not fearing or stressing or worrying about overthinking about what might or could or may happen, or we're not regretting or thinking about or obsessing about something in the past. In this moment, I am okay. Try that one.
Research has found that techniques of meditation, positive imaging, progressive muscle relaxation are instrumental in alleviating anxiety and symptoms of depression, as these techniques arouse the parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for inducing feelings of calmness and relaxation, as opposed to the activation of sympathetic nervous system under the state of panic and anxiety. Mindful breathing helps you with the challenge of panic. It involves diaphragmatic or abdominal breathing, also known as belly breathing, which is very helpful in calming the body, because it's the way that you naturally breathe when asleep or relaxed.
What many people don't know is that the primary muscle for breathing respiration is actually located under your lungs and above your stomach. It's called the diaphragm. It's a large dome-shaped muscle located horizontally between the chest cavity and the stomach. Contracting the diaphragm causes it to flatten out like this, and this creates a vacuum that pulls air down into the lungs, and it pushes the belly out. When you breathe with your diaphragm, your belly expands instead of your chest. So try this out now. Put one hand on your chest and one hand on your belly. So now, inflate your stomach as you breathe in while keeping your chest and shoulders relaxed, sort of like this. So imagine expanding your stomach like a beach ball, and that will push out the hand that's over your belly. Avoid expanding your chest outward or your shoulders upward. So you want the hand over your chest to remain still and the hand over the stomach to expand outward. Inhale deeply by pushing your stomach out. Inhale slowly and feel your stomach pulling in. Your shoulders and your chest should stay relaxed. You might notice it takes some effort to do belly breathing the first time you try this because it's much different than what you've been doing unconsciously. Your neck and chest muscles have been doing most of the work up until now, leaving your diaphragm down here weak and inefficient. The first time you try this, you might even get a little lightheaded, and that's fine. Belly breathing is the healthiest and most natural way to breathe. This is how you were born breathing. Now, if you watch a sleeping baby, you'll see that's how they breathe. The belly expands, but not the chest. Deep belly breathing causes profound physiological changes. It very quickly decreases your heart rate and your blood pressure. And because it also engages the lower portion of your lungs instead of just the upper, more oxygen is getting into your bloodstream, releasing natural endorphins and serotonin. In other words, taking in these deep belly breaths creates a relaxation response that interrupts the fight or flight response of high anxiety. You will most definitely notice a change in your stress levels simply by doing this breathing exercise. As of right now, belly breathing is probably not your unconscious style of breathing. However, simply continuing to practice belly breathing will eventually lead to this becoming an unconscious habit. That's the goal.
It's natural to think negative and whine about what is missing in life. The easiest way to diffuse negative recurring thoughts of anxiety and worry is to identify them. Make a worry corner in your house, or designate a chair as your worry chair. Allow yourself to worry about your stressor only when you're in your worry chair or corner. Give yourself 15 minutes a day to sit and worry. If worries come up at other times, either write them down or save them up for your next worry period. Soon, your brain will learn to associate worry only with your worry chair and associate all your other activities with the absence of worry. In this way, you can satisfy your urge to worry in a controlled, time-limited way. In practical terms, this means capturing your worries in a notebook or journal to jot down everything that's worrying you, no matter how idiotic or vague it is. Once you've done so, the rest of the day will be relatively worry-free. Write down your frequent worries and create a plan B to overcome your challenges. Example, if you worry about creditors, think about different payment options available. Spend time to create strategies to overcome challenges. Look for different ways to achieve your ideal outcome, and do this exercise when you are not in the worry mode. Your brain knows its concerns have been recorded and not simply ignored. Do this every day, turning to a fresh page each time. You'll realize, incidentally, that it's always the same dozen or so worries tormenting you. At the weekend, read through the week's notes and follow the advice of Bertrand Russell. When you find yourself inclined to brood on anything, no matter what, the best plan always is to think about it even more than you naturally would, until at last its morbid fascination is worn off. In practical terms, this means imagining the worst possible consequences and forcing yourself to think beyond them. You'll discover that most concerns are overblown. The rest are genuine dangers, and those must be confronted. If you find yourself worrying at any other time, write the worry down and postpone thinking about it until your allocated worry slot or your worry chair. When you find yourself in compulsive worrying other than your dedicated worry time, it's also good to have a positive distraction strategy. If you're lying awake worrying at night, get up after 15 minutes and read a book, listen to music, or watch something that takes your mind off of it.
Schedule fun or distracting activities like going out, going to a gym, cooking, painting, going out with friends, watching a movie, or talking to a friend on the phone, and so on. Discuss your problems with people who can really give you solutions. Hang out with people who can lighten up your mood, who can take you away from the things that you worry about, who can take you to a place and space where you can lighten up yourself. Also spending time with pets is also a good thing to do because it really increases your oxytocin levels. Get involved with something that you really love. Develop new hobbies. Make new friends. Go on a nature walk. Explore yourself. Explore the world around you and start experiencing the beauty around you. In that way, you are shifting the focus from you, zooming into yourself too much to really zoom out and see the beauty of the world around you. That's the key.
Read books that are filled with positive and uplifting ideas. Get inspired. Watch positive content that fills your mind with positive thoughts. Your brain is plastic, and you can intentionally mold it with the repetition of new inputs and rewire the old one that is habituated to worries. One of the easiest ways to get out worries is to work out. Exercise and moving your body releases endorphins, which relieve tension and stress. Soothe your senses with aromatherapy, music, deep relaxation massages, and nature walks. Lisa Mosconi, PhD, author of Brain Food, says, "As city dwellers, we spend far less time outside than our ancestors did, which has been linked to higher levels of stress, anxiety, depression, and other mental illnesses. Instead, our world's eldest and healthiest people don't live in polluted, cramped cities, but cluster in small communities, along mountainsides and secluded rivers, immersing themselves in uncontaminated natural environments. I strongly believe that there must be something to that. Since breaking a sweat and being in nature are both so good for your brain, it makes sense that doing them at the same time wouldn't be a bad idea. Make a point of walking uphill and without pausing for the first 45 minutes to an hour to ensure aerobic exertion." Recent studies point out that having an unhealthy gut can jeopardize brain functions.
So I want to talk about how the gut and the brain are connected. A lot of people don't realize that the gut is responsible for making serotonin and a couple other really important neurotransmitters. When your gut's in bad shape, it can't make the neurotransmitters that your brain needs to function properly. And anxiety and depression are huge symptoms that something is wrong with your gut. I know there's a flip side to it about learning how to control your thoughts, and I do talk a lot about that. But when it comes down to it, if your brain cannot make the proper chemicals for you to think the right way, it's foggy, cloudy, maybe you're having adrenaline rushes and panic attacks and anxiety. A lot of that stems from gut issues. Inside your gut, you have an enzyme, DAO, and that's responsible for eating extra histamine in your body. And if your gut's out of balance and you can't get rid of that extra histamine, the histamine levels climb. That can cause major anxiety and panic attacks. I dealt with that for years, and my histamine intolerance issues did not go away until I dealt with my gut infections.
It has revealed that alterations in the gut microbes can influence the risk of brain disorders such as autism, anxiety, depression, and even dementia. This has resulted in increased attention to the concept that a healthy gut is critical to a healthy brain. What goes on in your belly can have a serious impact on how you think and feel. Research has also found that stress in early life can alter our gut bacteria and might be a contributing factor in anxiety later down the road. And a 2013 study found that good gut bacteria also has an effect on the production of GABA, the neurotransmitter that calms the brain. Excessive intake of sugar can feed bad gut bacteria. Consuming prebiotic foods has been shown to lower levels of cortisol, a key stress hormone. The bottom line is, feed only the good gut bacteria and eliminate bad gut bacteria from your system. A healthy gut is a healthy mind. Worry often gives a small thing a big shadow.
Worry will start with a tiny thought, and through repetition it becomes bigger, louder, and stronger. And it will become a habit where sometimes you have no control over. So when you see a concern in the beginning, it's better to tackle it then and there. Kill the demon when it's a baby. Otherwise, the small thoughts can become larger, bigger demon worries for you. And also, do not believe in everything that you think.
Dr. Wayne Dyer said it wisely. It makes no sense to worry about things you have no control over, because there's nothing you can do about them. And why worry about things you do control? How profound.
Many, many years ago, I saw the self-help author Wayne Dyer at a talk he was giving, and he said something I never forgot. He said that all worry falls into two categories, right? Stuff you could do something about and stuff you can't, right? So if you're worried about something, like you can do something about, like, how am I going to pay the bills? Well, maybe you can go out and, budget, learn how to budget your money better, or, get some extra work. I mean, there's actions you can take when there's something in your control. Right. The stuff that's out of your control, since it's out of your control, you just have to accept it and surrender to it. It's kind of like the serenity prayer. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So the serenity prayer is a powerful tool that they use in AA and recovery, and that we depressives and anxious people can also use for us. Is this in my control? If so, let's do something. If it's not in my control, let's surrender.
It is stupid to worry about things you have no control over, like weather, aging, and graying, etc. There is no point also in worrying about things you do have control over. If you have control, surely you can fix it. Then why worry?
I remember something that Mark Twain said towards the end of his life. He said, "I've known a great many worries, but none of them have ever happened to me." I've known a great many worries, but none of them have ever happened to me. When we live our lives in the present tense, in the present moment, and these imagined things have no power over us.